This interview is brought to you by My Patriot Supply. Let's talk about being prepared. After that winter wake-up call and the breakdown of the power grid, nobody can deny we're all quite vulnerable. We saw power grid failures and severe weather made the food supply chain come to a grinding halt in many parts of the country. And whenever that happens, people suffer. That's why it's smart to prepare in advance for these disasters by stocking up on long-term storage emergency food. Food that stays fresh up to 25 years so you never go hungry. I strongly recommend My Patriot Supply, America's leader in self-reliance. They're the only source I use for emergency food planning. And right now you can save $50 off a 4-week supply of delicious meals that give you 2,000 plus calories a day. That's what you'll need to survive the next disaster. And saving $50 is impossible to pass up, but supplies are limited. So go to preparewithx22.com and stock up now. That's preparewithx22.com. There's no time to lose. Do it now. Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report Spotlight. Today we have a returning guest, Claudio Graus. Claudio is the creator and owner of Precious Metal Advisory Switzerland. You can find his site at claudiograus.ch. And I am very happy to have Claudio back on the X22 Report Spotlight. Claudio, welcome back to the Spotlight.
Dave, always a pleasure talking to you.
Hey, thanks for coming back. And I mean, last time we spoke was back, I think, in September of 2020. And I wanted to get your take on what is happening now with the coronavirus out in Switzerland, out in Europe, with freedom, and what are people, how are they seeing it now? Are they still seeing it the same exact way from when it first started, or are people seeing it very differently?
Well, I mean, when it comes to the people, of course, you feel that the resistance is growing also over here in Switzerland. More and more people cannot grasp, what's really going on. Why they still have to protect themselves. Of course, now they're talking about the digital ID. You need the vaccine to be able to travel. I mean, all that stuff, which 1 year ago was considered a conspiracy, whatever,
right,
is now basically popping up. So, in Switzerland, the situation is still, the restaurants are closed. Everything which is related with sport facilities, for example, is also closed. And we don't know. I mean, our politicians are the same idiots as everywhere, so they are pushing the same agenda. They're, talking about now the third wave is coming and so on. And unfortunately, still, when you walk around in Switzerland, also then you have 99% of the people wearing masks whenever you go shopping and so on. I mean, I'm still one of the only ones who's not wearing a mask. I never wear one, so I'm still not going to do it.
Great.
And but it's really sad. I mean, still, if you compare Switzerland with the rest of Europe, I mean, it's still a different story. We never had those. We still haven't had those checkpoints, and that the police was controlling and enforcing it. So there's also not many people are being fined. If they just don't respect the minimum distance and all that stuff. So I mean, it's not that the police is more focusing on businesses, making sure that they have that they control the people, the peasants who are coming into their shops. So that's what they are doing, and it's just it's overall it's extremely sad after 12 months of this Corona circus that the people are still they realize that the economy is also going down the drain and that the world has changed. Not too many believe that we're going to go back to pre-Corona days, which still has been kind of vision for a lot of people. In the past, but I think even there, they are realizing that, it's a controlled demolition. That's what else can we say? When politics is taking over, shutting down the whole private economy and so on. Yeah, and that's where we are. So in Switzerland,
Do you find that people are still subservient to whatever the politicians say and do, like wear your mask? Are there people that is anyone speaking up against this? Do you see like protests or people saying, you know what, this is enough. We need to open up our businesses. We can't wear masks anymore. Do you see anyone starting to, push against what the politicians are saying?
Absolutely. I mean, you had, for example, a lot of restaurant owners. They really became, I mean, they are most of, I think, maybe 30% of all the restaurants are going to succeed in the future. And I think 30 or 40% are already bankrupt, and the other 30% most likely will also go down the drain. So there have been a few restaurants which were saying, we are going to open up and so on. But of course, if that's only one facility in a city, or maybe five restaurants in a city, then of course the police is standing there. So they have all been pushed back again. Then we started organizing demonstrations against Corona, because we also had, it wasn't allowed to gather more than 500 people. That has been the rule. So the first demonstration took place in the canton of Schwyz, I would say 2 months ago, where we had roughly 500 people because of these restrictions. And then 2 weeks later, there have been another one in Zug, where I also held a speech. But there we already had roughly 1,500 people. And then 2 weeks later, there was another one in Wohlen, where people doubled again, up to 3,000 people. And Now the last one has been in Chur, with 6,500 people, something like that. And now the next one is this weekend. But I mean, still, we are talking about a few thousand people. But the resistance, when I introduced the idea that Corona is a kind of invitation to leave the current system, because we will be restricted in our movement or freedom of movement anyway, and that they're going to drive, this vaccine, and you're not allowed, if you're not vaccinated, then you might not be allowed to go there or to go to this public court or square or whatever. I mean, that's a bit the issue, and we're going that direction. I think now people realizing that. And but people only wake up once they have hunger, or they. Still the Swiss, they still believe we are living on an island. Everything is fine. We are rich. But they don't understand, when the whole Western world basically is shutting down. Not only the Western, but the whole planet in a way. I mean, that it will have an impact, and I think so. This awareness is getting broader, but the people are still paralyzed. They're still afraid to act. The self-censorization, the political correctness. There is a lot of pressure, that you're not allowed freely to speak up your mind, because you believe that you might have problems in the office, or with your friends, of course. But the society is divided also over here in Switzerland. We really have those guys, the domesticated humans, who believe that the nanny state is going to save them. And then you have other people which realize, that they have to leave the system and withdraw physically and go up to, try to find like-minded people in a community. These plans, you can hear them much more frequently now these days. But even when you talk to people in the Czech Republic, or in Germany, or in the UK, or even in the States or South Africa, I had the conversation a few days ago. So I think it's, people realize that the world really has, some of the people realize that the world really has changed, and that they have to think about the future, and that, we're not going to go back to pre-Corona days anymore. I mean, society has already shifted. Some people will be scared to death because of that virus. And so you cannot, what do you want to do with those people, if they are completely paralyzed by fear, or they are just, in debt slaves, and hope that everything will play out fine in the future again, and that they don't lose their artificial wealth. So that's where we are.
Do you think people will reach a breaking point, or the precipice of enough is enough, like when they introduce vaccine passports and they keep infringing on freedoms? Do you think the people will finally say enough is enough, or do you think they'll just, act like sheep and just go along with it?
I think there will be definitely people who want to remain in that system. They are scared to death. They don't want to hear about liberty. They don't want to hear about freedom. They have this reptilian brain, which is all about survival and possession, and so it's not a conscious human being. I mean, they also don't think independently for themselves. I mean, if they would ever had taken some time, to look into the whole Corona stuff, I mean, then they would definitely know for sure that this is all exaggerated, and it's not about the flu. It's basically really about this great reset. I mean, there is a reset coming. But so I think, the population is divided. People are divided. Society is divided. I don't know how big the amount will be finally who are going to join the government. Is it 50%? Is it 70%? Is it 30%? I still have, people will go, they go to the streets or on the streets and rioting and so on when they are hungry. And right now, even here in Switzerland, everything is fine. People are being paid by the government, our banks, the central bank is also printing money. The government is spending money they don't have. So we are in this. So it's this kind of quietness before the storm. That's a little bit the way I feel it, and I hope that once people realize that the reset is really coming, that they will wake up and take action.
So you said something very interesting is the central banks, they're printing, they're paying the people. And it's not just happening in Switzerland, it's happening in every country. I mean, isn't there going to be a point where, yes, they can continually create this currency out of thin air, but as they create more and more, this is not like, it's not just going into the banking system where they can hide it. This is going out to the people. The people are using it and putting it back into the economy, which means more currency is in the economic realm, which means the value of the currency drops. Aren't we going to see inflation from all this, or maybe even hyperinflation? And aren't people going to start to realize that there's major problems here that I can't, almost like in Germany, when all of a sudden the currency went out of control and people were, wheeling wheelbarrows of cash to buy a cup of coffee or something like that. Aren't we going to reach that point again?
I think so. I mean, it's at the end of the day, if it would be possible that we can print wealth out of nothing, I mean, then the old example, give everyone $1 million and we can all have a happy life. And so it's never about the scarcity of money, because money is just a means to an end. It's always about the scarcity of goods and services. And when we look at goods and services on a global scale, that's highly deflationary because of the lockdowns, the international division of labor, supply chains, everything has been distorted, and now, of course, everything, it's like an avalanche. So everything takes time until the avalanche hits. And I think that's where we are. And but I also expect that inflation is going to rise because, as you said, now. In the past, governments were creating, central banks were creating money, and basically then it went into the banking system. Right. And then it went, of course, into the stock market, the asset bubbles, the real estate, the pension. Whatever they had to buy. And right now with MMT and this universal basic income, or handing over the checks, it's basically going directly into the hands of the individual. And I just had a conversation yesterday with Jeff Nice, the president of the Mises Institute, and he told me that in the States, groceries already, became much more expensive over the last few weeks and months. I don't know how is your have you witnessed the same?
Well, I've seen fuel prices that has gone up quite a bit, which then affects groceries because you're delivering the food, you're delivering the products. So you're seeing groceries start to move. I think you're going to start to see a lot of things start to move up, especially with Joe Biden, where he, during a pandemic and a dark winter, as he would say, all of a sudden he killed, the Keystone pipeline. He killed the lease contracts in Louisiana. And this is something like 300,000 jobs. So, during a pandemic, I don't know why you would kill jobs when everyone needs a job to get by. And it's during a very touchy situation. But again, I understand that he's taking orders from the puppet masters where they're pushing, like you said, the Great Reset, and they're trying to bring us into a brand new system. And but yes, I see things starting to move up very, very quickly. And I think people are starting to realize this, that prices, I shouldn't even say prices, that the currency is devaluing and you're seeing things become more expensive because you need more of that currency to buy that same exact item. And I think people are starting to notice this.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to become very, very tough for people.
No, inflation expectations are really rising, and I see the same, especially when you look at M1. Even what is money which can become available in a very short period of time. I mean, it's just it's exponential when you look at the Federal Reserve, for example. But it's the same, most of other countries. A lot of people also deposited cash and so on. But I mean, and then of course with the lockdowns, people are not able to spend. I mean, when you look at the velocity of money, how fast money is changing hands. I mean, we are on a record low.
Right.
So, and I think this is going. Yeah, I mean, we really reached the bottom. And I think the velocity is going to increase, and because they are, I mean, a trillion in seconds is 31,709 years. I mean, it's just a huge figure, and Biden came up with 1.9 trillion. I mean, it's completely insane. So I mean, of course, this system is going to end. I mean, the question is only with the people. How much are they willing to suffer? And how fast is that? I mean, once the hyperinflation is kicking in, I mean, it's going pretty fast. But of course, no one knows when this is going to happen. I also expect that, the next few months, stock market or maybe bonds. I mean, we still have, bonds. I think a lot, when people lose the faith into the institution, then we basically will see a hyperinflation. And that might be, that they sell their bonds, which are still negative, even now with slightly higher interest rates. But when you really look at the bonds, inflationary adjusted, I mean, you're still losing money. So that money still can move into the stock market. So, I mean, there might be possible that we're going to see this crack up boom. The stock market is, when people getting nervous that they move into the stock market, then basically that's the end of the big, then the big bang is coming. But when this is going to happen and how fast, of course, nobody knows. But I think, the fundamentals are really, I mean, inflation is definitely a topic, and stuff will become much more expensive and will be hard to get real and hard assets. So, and I think, food, hard assets, everything is undervalued anyway. So, and this is going to, just to outperform in the future just because of inflation, because it's adding protection against the loss of purchasing power of fiat money.
Do you think when we start to see, I mean, we're seeing inflation now, but when we see inflation start to really pick up, I mean, if we go back to, let me just go back to 1971, when the U.S. came off the gold standard, we saw inflation then. I mean, all of a sudden, the value of the dollar was worth a lot less because it came off of gold. And we saw higher interest rates. But here we are at the back end of that central bank system where interest rates, they're not at 15%, 14%. Interest rates are at 0 or negative in some places. And we're seeing a huge amount of debt, not just in the U.S., but around the world, which is completely unsustainable. Even if the interest rates, ticked up to 2, 3, 4, 5%, it would destroy pretty much everything. So where do you think people are? I mean, when this starts to hit this avalanche, all of a sudden, this starts to fall, everything starts to fall apart. Where do you think people are going to rush into? I mean, right now we're seeing Bitcoin, which is like 57,000. Gold is at 1,800. I know you work with gold, but where do you think people are going to run it, take their currency? Because if they just leave it in the bank, it's just going to, evaporate? Where do you think they're going to go?
Yeah, I think most of the people they will be trapped anyway. If they don't get it now, what's going on, or become a bit more critical, then, I mean, they will not get it. They will get it when it's too late for them. And I also am a bit afraid that, when people want to buy physical precious metals, that there will be no metals available. Because even now, I mean, you look at the physical gold market, for example, I mean, you really have scarcity when it comes to gold and silver. I mean, if you want to order gold, I mean, you have to wait 2-3 weeks today to get it physically delivered. In the past, it used to be 3 or 4 days. The same goes for silver. It's even more harder to get, but the prices were going down. And at the same time, they hyped, the Bitcoin. But so I think,
Let's talk about being prepared. After that winter wake-up call and the breakdown of the power grid, nobody can deny we're all quite vulnerable. We saw power grid failures and severe weather made the food supply chain come to a grinding halt in many parts of the country. And whenever that happens, people suffer. That's why it's smart to prepare in advance for these disasters by stocking up on long-term storage emergency food. Food that stays fresh up to 25 years so you never go hungry. I strongly recommend My Patriot Supply, America's leader in self-reliance. They're the only source I use for emergency food planning. And right now you can save $50 off a 4-week supply of delicious meals that give you 2,000 plus calories a day. That's what you'll need to survive the next disaster. And saving $50 is impossible to pass up, but supplies are limited. So go to preparewithx22.com and stock up now. That's preparewithx22.com. There's no time to lose. Do it now.
Whatever you have in the current banking system is the property titles are only of temporary nature. This is the biggest bubble. Cash, whatever is in the bank. I mean, we're going to see a banking crisis in the future because the banks are done. Anyway, like the UBS, the Credit Suisse, and all this gold. I mean, you don't need the banks any longer in the future because now we can see that even the central banks, they want to promote this central banking digital coin. So I think the world is really changing. We don't know how fast these changes will occur, but I think the trends are visible and they are there. And I can only recommend everyone, your insurance is basically whatever you have outside the banking system. And this can be hard assets, metals, base metals. I still believe cryptocurrency is definitely interesting. It's part of the future. I'm still not sure if Bitcoin is the store of value, but it's definitely, cryptocurrencies are a superior medium of exchange.
Yes.
But I don't know if it makes sense. I don't know if Bitcoin is also coupled with the US dollar, with the fiat money, and it's a bubble. It's a big speculation. Maybe it's going to work. Maybe not. I just would not put all my cards on that table. And then we'll see. I mean, I have my gold and silver, and I feel comfortable. Whatever is coming, I don't have no debts. So I feel pretty fine out. The only stuff which I basically really buy is really hard assets. Overall.
I mean, we started off with the coronavirus. Do you still think that the private Western Central Bank, the establishment, you still think that they're using this coronavirus to bring us into the Great Reset?
Yeah, I mean that has been, when everything started in March last year.
Right.
We had a few thousand people dying in China, and I mean every day 4,000 people are dying because of pollution and so on in China. And then then the whole world started to lock down and shut down, and Lufthansa grounded the whole fleet. I just thought, this is it's insane. I mean, it doesn't make sense based on the information we had up to then. It was completely insane to do something like this. And at the same time, over the last 12 months, I mean, even what we have definitely found out is lockdowns don't work. They don't even make a difference. So why do we still have those lockdowns? So what are we really talking about? So for me, it was always a kind of controlled demolition of the current system. And then at the same time, you basically propagate the Hollywood movie script, which we know from the movies, artificial intelligence, and everything becomes robot, and we're living in this IT tech new world, Aldous Huxley, New Brave World stuff. And I think that's just bullshit. I mean, this is something they're propagating. They have no clue if it's going to work or not. And central planning, on top of a highly leveraged, completely indebted system, I mean, how do you want to do this? I mean, so you need a reset, and to me, I think that's what's coming. I mean, I don't, because really the world has changed, and I discussed that, for example, with Václav Klaus. He used to be the former president of Czech, the second president after Havel. The classic liberal. I mean, he still believes we need a state and so on, but he's a classic liberal, and he has always been an open mind and the champion of liberty. He was fighting against the European Union. He was fighting against, that the state becomes too authoritarian and so on. And I had a discussion with him in November about Corona. And he also said, Corona is not an attack against democracy. it's a brutal oppression of democracy, something which we haven't seen since the fall of the Soviet Union on the continent of Europe. So I mean, the guys who lived under communism, at least these guys, they understand what's going on, and they understand that it's not the flu or it's not the deadly virus, whatever. That it's really about political grip, a centralization within a centralized system on a higher scale even. So yeah.
So what system do you think they're trying to bring? And I'm not talking about monetary. Like, where are they trying to bring the people? I mean, you're saying this individual is saying that, we haven't seen anything like this since the Soviet Union. We haven't seen anything like this since communism. Are they trying to bring us into a communist type of realm, or are they bringing us to a socialist type of realm? Where do they want the people to go, or do they just want complete control and they don't want anyone making or thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we have a good example, which is in real time already available, and that's China.
Mm-hmm.
Where everything is controlled. When you leave your apartment, then you have to stand in front of a camera. It takes, the temperature, the facial recognition. And if you haven't drunk too much alcohol over the last few days, then you're on green and you can leave. And if you did something wrong, then you might be on orange. And if you're on red, then you really have a problem. I mean, this is really, I don't believe that we go back to the classic, communism days. I think it's really more like this new brave world of Aldous Huxley, which they try to achieve. So a kind of combination of crony capitalism, Amazon, the Facebooks, and all these guys, big multinationals who basically became so big because of political support and protection and so on. And then, of course, these ideological politicians, these sociopaths, in combination with this green, that the world is going down in a few years. I mean, I think it's a mixture of, you have people with the wrong ideology, which is completely collectivistic. Then you have, these anointed experts, which are completely, they're intellectual yet idiots, which just promote something because it fits into the narrative, and of course they feel so important that they, I heard about our politicians which are promoting this. I mean, these are the best days they ever had, because now they feel really important and everyone is listening to them, and they are in the lead. They can tell the people what they're allowed, how they have to even to protect them, and what they're allowed to say. These corona deniers and so on. I mean, we have heard that kind of dialectic. It's not that long ago. So
So you think complete control? They want you monitored from when you leave your house to when you return to your house. Even if maybe you don't even have a house, maybe they set you up in a small little cube that you can live in, and you're not allowed to speak your mind. They want complete and utter control of everything that you do, just like China.
Yeah. I mean, that's at least what they are propagating. Of course, Corona has been an invitation really for every authoritarian or totalitarian politician on this planet. So the guy in the Philippines, he thought, Duterte, he said, now I can consolidate power. If you don't wear a mask, people can shoot you. Even here in Switzerland, we are not. This is really what we are witnessing is a war against Western civilization. Really, it's nothing else than this, and this is going on for a very long time. And Corona is now the peak, because it's going against, what are the values of an enlightened society. And that's, self-responsibility, private property, freedom of speech, freedom of choice. Man is not a means to an end. Man is born free. It has a purpose in itself. So, and what we are witnessing right now is really, that's all going against that. So we are, I'm not part of an enlightened society any longer. I'm surrounded by savages and barbarians. That's how I feel. And the Western civilization really was the only one which basically came. We have been the driving force behind industrialization and everything, and we created a lot of wealth and prosperity. And in the last 200 years, it's not that long ago. When you think about how the world has looked like 100 years ago, I mean, it's completely, right. Or even let's say 150 years ago, it's amazing the progress which has taken place in a positive way. So the standard of living which has increased tremendously, and that's all at stake now.
Yeah. How can people who don't agree with this, who say, you know something, I can't go along with this, how do they fight back? How do they get other people to say, no, we are free? And how do people go up against these tyrants?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the point. I mean, when I go to these demonstrations, for example, I mean, I would say still, let's say 50% of the people are wearing the mask, the muzzle. So I don't understand why those guys, they went to see a doctor and asked for a medical certificate, So a lot of people still believe that we will remain in one system, and now we have to find a way for the whole community all together, and that they are on this side or on the other side. And I think this, for the future, it's impossible, because the society as such is so divided. Society has shifted. I mean, people will not, some people will never shake hands again. Some people are scared to death. They will remain at home. Some people will run around with the muzzle. Some people will be happy to get the new vaccine. Some people will even force others to take the vaccine as well, because otherwise they don't feel safe. So, I mean, and then, of course, on the other side, you have those people who say, no, I mean, the vaccine that's the end game, or, to vaccine my children, that's the end game. But I think there are right now, a lot of people are in this thinking process, because it takes a lot of courage, to understand that. I think the only way out is, you have to you have to take action, and you really have to think about, okay, how do I detach physically from this system? Because the expectation, the future doesn't look bright. It will not be happy and shiny, and we have MMT and UBI, and the people will have a nice life. I mean, everything is open, and the future. I mean, yeah, we can only expect that things are getting worse, especially if we remain in this system. And now, of course, the question is, how many people are willing to keep an open mind and to start thinking about, okay, what do I do? How can I protect myself? How can I protect my family? What is necessary? How do I physically detach from this system? I think that's the only. I mean, that's my only. I mean, that's what I'm talking about for the last 12 months. We have this project also here in Switzerland, which it's exactly that kind of stuff.
Do you see more and more? Do you see more and more people thinking the way you're thinking? Like, okay, we can't go along with this anymore. We have to be free. Do you see more and more people coming to you, or do you see more people headed in that direction for freedom?
I mean, of course, I can see more people who are heading in that direction. But of course, I don't know, I mean, of course, the people I'm surrounded with are more free thinkers, individualists. They understand, the economy. They understand principles of liberty, the principle of an enlightened society and so on. So that's still a minority, of course. But even over here in Switzerland, I think, the big change and the big opposition will come when the system really goes down. When they receive, when they know for sure, okay, I'm not going to have a job. My company is bankrupt. The other company is bankrupt. Tourism. I mean, think about tourism, for example. It's 15% of all the labor forces on a global scale are in tourism. And I think 90% of tourism is gone. The world really, I mean, we're not going to see Lufthansa, American Airlines, having the same amount of flights in the future again. I think 90% is going to disappear within the. I mean, it already disappeared, but it's going to remain like this. And so what do you do? I mean, with 15% of all the people, and then you can think about, okay, they also in especially low skilled workers. So I mean, only tourism and what is related to it. I mean, that's already a huge problem, and it's affecting a tremendous amount of jobs. So yeah, I don't know how long. I mean, yeah, people. You said it takes a lot of bravery, to think about.
No, it does. I mean, it takes a lot of bravery. I mean, I'm thinking about the United States with the founding fathers. where they were going up against the British, it took a lot of bravery because they actually went to war. It wasn't like, oh, you know what, we want our freedom and please let us have the freedom. The British tried to take the freedom away from the people, but the people fought back, and they were brought to a point where they said no more. That was their breaking point with the British. And you said something very interesting where you said with the economy, if that company's bankrupt, this company's bankrupt, I can't afford anything, people might start to wake up and start to see everything differently, because we all have that in common. If we're not earning money, you can't live. I mean, yes, if you know how to live off the land, but many people do not know how to live off the land. I mean, do you think that will be the common denominator that will unite the people to say, okay, we have nothing, we're not making anything? It's almost like the Great Depression, when people lost their jobs, they couldn't live in their house, they couldn't live in their apartment, they couldn't function. Do you think that's going to happen with this Great Reset, where people will finally snap out of it because they're not making any money?
I mean, I think so. I mean, it will be a combination of, some people are going to opt out, and other people will turn to the violent side. I mean, we're going to see chaos and disorder. But I mean, that's also, that's what they are. I mean, look at the migration is being enforced still in the States. We have the same over here in Europe. Now on the Canary Island or in Mallorca, the hotels which are empty now became refugee camps. And so it's this. And then you see pictures from France, Spain, Germany. I mean, really big demonstrations, and street fights, that kind of stuff, especially in France, for example.
So why do you?
It's absolutely catastrophic.
Why do you think there are those big protests, like with the yellow vests, and there's street fights, and they're very angry? What is your take on what's going on in France and Spain and those places?
I think in France and there you definitely also have, of course, this multiculturalism, which has been enforced on our Western world, that everyone is the same, and, bringing mass migration, which with people coming from a completely different background, completely different culture, and they were really, most of them were coming because, of course, the Western world was responsible to bomb the shit out of the Middle East, for decades now.
Right.
And at the same time, these people were expecting also a better life, but they were looking, they thought, they believed this American propaganda, bullshit TV campaign, and they always thought, this is the land of honey and milk. So let's go to Europe, and then we will receive also a house and, car, and we're going to have a good life. That's what we can see from TV and so on. And of course, these guys, they haven't found a different environment. They also realize that they're quite often not that welcome, that they don't find a job, and that it's not so, that they don't get so much as they have expected, from certain governments. And now, of course, with all the restrictions and so on, becoming more extreme, more aggressive. So it's really luring, it's building up, and but I think it's going to detonate or explode even further in the future. I mean, there will be huge riots, and it will. That's why I also believe it has a lot of things to do with the culture. I mean, what kind of culture area are you in? How homogeneous the culture is? The Swiss used to be, we never had metals in the ground. We were never a rich country because Switzerland only had mountains, a hard climate, and so on. So the only stuff which we were really available to give away was freedom. More freedom, more liberty, less government, and that has, of course, it has changed over the last 20 years when government even was inviting more and more refugees and people who don't qualify or who would not find this a job in our economical structure, and now, of course, they're all living off tax money, and at the same, it's just because it's a nice idea that we can take care of everyone. At the end of the day, it's not reasonable. It's not possible. And you always have to steal from somewhere to hand it over to others. And this really has been, this has been done over the last 20 years tremendously. So, I mean, everything, the whole society has been completely corrupted. When you lost your job 25 years ago in Switzerland, I mean, hardly a person went to get some unemployed money.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Swiss back then, they thought, no, I'm too proud. And of course, I had some savings, and now in the last 20 years, it has changed completely. Everyone is trying to get as much out of the system as possible, and that's the whole. I mean, the whole motivation of all the political programs that are in place are completely wrong. It always. I mean, the motivation is always it leads to. That you burn capital, that you waste, it leads to more waste, to all that kind of stuff. Central planning and central planning never works.
We could see that.
And then 8 years. I mean, this generation. I find this generational cycles so interesting, because 8 years going back. First, Second World War, 8 years. Then you had the Civil War in the United States. We had the same problems over here in Europe. You go back another 8 years. Then you had the War for Independence. I mean, it's amazing, I mean, so you have these generational cycles, and I think history does not repeat, but it rhymes, mm-hmm. and you can. I mean, it's a debt-based system since 1971. I mean, you mentioned before in 1971, we had inflation, but then Volcker was able to. I mean, interest rates went up to 18-19%.
Right.
But, back in 1971, I mean, I think 99.8% of all the debt of the United States has been created since 1971. So they cannot take up, interest rates, because that will blow up the whole system. So it's really kind of, either it's going fast, or, they try to control demolition somehow and try to move, shut down the old economy, and then we can build we create new money, and we will build up a new green CO2. I mean, this is, I mean, these guys are crazy.
Yeah.
These politicians, these bureaucrats, these deep statler, these parasites. At the end of the day, they never worked. They were always in politics, and politics and power corrupts, and it's just a competition of crooks. That's what politics is all about. And hopefully now, for the first time, more and more people would realize that we don't need politicians. We don't need a president. We should go, the idea of Switzerland, the principles of subsidiarity, organize everything on the lowest level, can do it on a municipality level. But that needs, we need more decentralization, and with it comes also the competition of ideas. And so I'm positive that we will. I mean, I'm not positive of. I mean, we always expected the end of the current system, and now with Corona, of course, it's just. I mean, it's politics decide that the economy is below the politicians. That the politician can decide who is allowed to work and to put food on the table, and who is not allowed, who is essential and is not essential. I mean, this is all communism. This is totalitarian. This is authoritarian. And when the people don't see it and still believe in the nanny state, I mean, I don't want to work. I don't want to deal with those people in the future anyway. Mm. I lost so much respect for doctors. The whole medical. I mean, all these government-sponsored doctors and whatever. I mean, it's a shame. It's a shame how they are all propagating the same narrative. And
do you see a light at the end of the tunnel where people can take back control from these corrupt politicians, from the corrupt central bankers?
Absolutely. I mean, I hope that it will pop up in all different kind of spots. I truly believe we're going to see much more competition in the future. And there is not one new world order, whatever possible. I think it's going to fail anyway. I mean, there will be a transition period which might be difficult, when the government still, when they are getting more grip on the whole situation, they might confiscate your wealth and so on, as long as they can function somehow. But on the other side, you will see much more people who just say, okay, enough is enough, and now we are leaving. But we understood that we have to leave the big cities because it's becoming a center of oppression and total surveillance and so on, and that they say, okay, let's change the way we live. Mm. And let's try to find like-minded people and organize ourselves in communities or in areas where we have conservative Christians, they want to live among them. And, if California wants to become communistic, socialistic, let them do it. Let's just have, let's just have at least a discussion. There is not only one opinion. No one knows the truth. So, but why don't we have discussions, where we can say, okay, what are we going to do in the future? How do we deal, with the current situation? What are the impacts on our society, on the economy as such, and so on? That's all not happening, and therefore I think, some people, there will be more people who understand, but at the same time they also understand that they have to take action.
Yeah,
They cannot just talk and hope that the others are going to solve it. They really have to act themselves.
Claudio, thank you very much for being on the X22 Report Spotlight. Once again, how can people see your work?
Well, they can go on my webpage. It's www.claudiograss.ch.
Mm-hmm.
And if they have questions, whatever, I'm always happy to answer emails. All my coordinates are there. And always a pleasure talking to you, Dave.
Yes.
Sorry that I was a bit down today, but I have my good days. I have my bad days.
Yeah. No, thank you for coming on. Thank you for taking the time to come on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yes.
Take care.